Most videos that promise you can beat 99% of people are lying to you. Not because the advice sounds wrong, not because effort doesn't matter, but because they quietly assume something you don't have. Leverage. And if you don't have leverage, everything else they tell you is noise. In 2026, you do not beat 99% by working harder, waking up earlier, stacking habits, or becoming more disciplined. That lane is already full. You beat 99% by leaving the lane they are all trapped in, fast, before it drains you completely. Here's the uncomfortable truth, right from the start. If hard work were the answer, most people would not be struggling. That sentence alone offends people because from childhood, we were trained to believe effort is sacred. Work hard, keep your head down, push through, stay disciplined, and eventually, things will work out. That belief used to be true, in a very different world. A world where effort was rare, competition was local, information was scarce, and simply showing up already put you ahead. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. He warned that power never rewards virtue by itself. It rewards position. Those who confuse morality with outcomes always lose to those who understand structure. In his words, men are quick to praise effort, but results follow necessity, not goodness. Today, work harder is no longer advice. It is a trap, not because effort is bad, but because effort has become cheap. Look around. The modern economy is flooded with people who work hard. They wake up early, they stay late, they grind relentlessly, they optimize routines, track habits, listen to podcasts at 1.5 speed, and consume endless motivation, and most of them stay broke. Effort is everywhere, which means effort is no longer a competitive advantage. The moment everyone adopts the same behavior, the market stops paying for it. The uncomfortable truth is simple. Hard work stopped being valuable the moment it became common. In an overcrowded system, effort does not get rewarded. It gets neutralized. When millions of people are willing to work long hours for the same outcomes, the market does not pay more. It pays less. Telling people to work harder today is like telling them to run faster on a treadmill already set to maximum speed. You burn more energy. You don't move forward. And yet, almost all mainstream success advice still starts there. Wake up earlier, be more disciplined, remove distractions, optimize habits. This advice quietly assumes one thing that is no longer true, that effort still has leverage. It doesn't. In 2026, effort is abundant. Time is abundant. Talent is abundant. Leverage is scarce. This is the biggest lie people believe about their own failure. They think they're losing because they're not trying hard enough. In reality, they're losing because they're playing a game designed to absorb effort without producing disproportionate returns. Look at the lanes most people are in. Corporate jobs, freelance marketplaces, small local businesses, content platforms dependent on algorithms. These environments are saturated. They reward compliance, consistency, and predictability, not breakthrough. Inside these systems, working harder doesn't make you richer. It makes you more useful to the system you're trapped in. That's the part no one wants to admit. When you double your effort in a crowded lane, you don't double your income. You stabilize your position. You become more reliable, more dependable, slightly harder to fire, slightly easier to replace. That's not progress. That's containment. This lie persists for a psychological reason, not an economic one. Hard work feels moral. It feels virtuous. It protects your self-image. Because as long as you believe the problem is that you haven't worked hard enough yet, you never have to confront the far more dangerous possibility that your entire direction is wrong. Most people would rather exhaust themselves than admit they chose the wrong lane. Effort is comforting because it's controllable. Position is terrifying because it's not. Machiavelli warned that men cling to familiar paths even when those paths lead to ruin because abandoning them requires admitting misjudgment. So people double down. They wake up earlier, optimize further, Consume more advice. Sink deeper. This is why motivation content thrives. It gives people something to do without forcing them to change where they stand. It keeps them busy. But money doesn't care how busy you are. It cares where you're positioned. History makes this obvious if you look at who actually captured leverage instead of admiration. Take J. Paul Getty during the Great Depression. While thousands of disciplined oil men cut costs, followed routines, and tried to survive the downturn, Getty did something that looked irrational. He borrowed aggressively and bought oil fields everyone else avoided because demand had collapsed. He wasn't working harder than other executives. Many of them were far more disciplined operators. What made Getty wealthy was position. When the economy recovered, he controlled reserves others no longer had access to. His leverage came from moving into structural advantage while others optimized behavior. Even more quietly, consider Reed Hastings in Netflix's early transition years. Hastings wasn't the most disciplined executive in Silicon Valley, and Netflix's internal culture was famously messy. What mattered was position. He exited the crowded DVD and cable logic early and embedded Netflix into distribution before studios understood what was happening. Engineers at other companies worked just as hard. Some worked harder. But Netflix controlled the pipe when streaming became inevitable. Discipline kept others employed. Position made Netflix unavoidable. Same pattern, different industries. The people who looked responsible stayed replaceable. The people who stepped into structural leverage looked reckless first and inevitable later. Discipline made them reliable. Position made them impossible to ignore. Hard work made sense in eras where effort was scarce. That world is gone. Today, effort is global. You're competing with millions of people across time zones who are just as hungry, just as disciplined, and often willing to work for less. In that environment, effort becomes baseline. The market doesn't ask who worked hardest. It asks who controls something scarce. And most people control nothing scarce. They control their time, their discipline, their routines, all abundant. They do not control leverage. This is why so many people feel stuck despite doing everything right. They followed the advice, stayed consistent, stayed patient, but patience inside a dead-end lane just means arriving at the same place more exhausted. Think of it this way. You can pour water endlessly into sand and it disappears, or you can pour a small amount into a container and it accumulates. Most people are pouring effort into sand and blaming themselves when nothing fills up. They were taught effort equals virtue, so they assume the problem must be them, not the container. This is why telling people to just work harder is not neutral advice. It actively keeps them trapped. It keeps them focused on intensity instead of direction, discipline instead of leverage, behavior instead of position, and that's exactly why it gets amplified everywhere. Advice that doesn't threaten the structure is safe. Advice that questions the lane itself is dangerous. Before we go further, take a second and reflect. If this hit uncomfortably close, comment one word below that captures what you're realizing right now. Something simple like position or lane. Lock the idea in. And if this perspective already feels different from everything else you've been told, subscribe and join a growing community of men who are done optimizing effort and ready to understand how power and money actually work. In the next part, something even more uncomfortable gets exposed. Why being surrounded by hard-working people is one of the fastest ways to stay average. Why the crowd itself is a penalty. And why the moment you step into the same lane as everyone else, you've already accepted a ceiling. Money avoids crowds, and until that's understood, every ounce of effort you add only makes you better at staying exactly where you are. The crowd penalty is one of the most expensive lessons most people never learn. Almost everyone believes safety comes from doing what everyone else is doing. If many people choose the same path, it must be stable. If a lane is crowded, it must be proven. If something is popular, it must work. That belief feels logical. It feels responsible. And it is financially lethal. Because in reality, being in the same lane as the crowd does not protect you. It penalizes you. Crowds do not create opportunity. They consume it. Every time a lane becomes safe, it also becomes saturated. And the moment a lane is saturated, returns collapse. This is not a moral statement. It's a structural one. The modern economy punishes predictability, and nothing is more predictable than a crowd. Look at what people call safe choices: a stable job, a respectable career, a skill everyone recommends learning, a business model with thousands of tutorials on YouTube. These things feel safe because they are familiar. But familiarity is not safety. Familiarity is visibility, and visibility attracts competition. When you choose a lane because it feels safe, what you're actually choosing is a lane where millions of other people already are, or are actively moving into. And when supply explodes, value dies. Machiavelli warned that following the crowd is how men surrender power without realizing it. He observed that those who move with the masses inherit the fate of the masses. The crowd moves slowly, it reacts late, and it pays in averages. This is why following mainstream advice almost guarantees average outcomes. Not because the advice is wrong in isolation, but because it sends too many people to the same destination. Learn to code. Start a dropshipping store. Become a freelancer. Build a personal brand. Create content. None of these are bad ideas, but the moment they become mass advice, they stop being leverage. The market does not reward what is common. It discounts it. And yet society keeps pushing people toward crowded lanes intentionally, because crowded lanes are easier to manage. Predictable people are controllable. Organized ambition flowing through narrow paths is easy to absorb. This is why the system constantly promotes stability. Stability sounds responsible. Stability sounds mature. Stability sounds like adulthood, but stability in economic terms often means something very specific. Low variance, low upside, and total dependence on continuity. Stable paths are designed to keep systems running, not to create outsized outcomes. This is the distinction most people never learn to make. Stable does not mean scalable. A stable system works as long as nothing changes. A scalable system grows faster than the effort put into it. Most people spend their lives optimizing for stability and then wonder why they never experience exponential results. They choose jobs where income increases linearly, businesses that require constant presence, skills that cap out quickly, environments where growth is incremental by design. And they call this being realistic. But realism, when shared by millions, becomes a ceiling. Crowded lanes reward compliance, not initiative. They reward reliability, not leverage. They reward those who fit, not those who expand. This is why being surrounded by hard-working people often makes you poorer over time, because effort only compounds when applied in uncrowded territory. In a crowd, effort cancels out. Everyone is trying. Everyone is grinding. Everyone is improving. So the advantage disappears. What remains is price competition, burnout, and marginal gains. This is why people in crowded lanes obsess over optimization. They optimize schedules, workflows, productivity, habits. Because when direction cannot change, intensity becomes the only variable left. But intensity inside a crowded lane does not produce escape. It produces exhaustion. This is where discipline enters the story, and where most people get deeply confused. Discipline is praised relentlessly, romanticized endlessly, treated as if it were a shortcut to power. But discipline does not make you rich. It makes you reliable, and those are not the same thing. In today's economy, discipline is not leverage. It is the baseline. You are not special because you wake up early. You are not rare because you work out. You are not ahead because you follow a routine. You are simply compliant with expectations millions of others already meet. Discipline helps you stay inside a system longer. It does not help you escape it. In fact, discipline often becomes a liability. A disciplined person tolerates more. They endure more. They stay longer in low-leverage positions because they're trained to push through. This is why so many disciplined people feel a quiet resentment they can't explain. They did everything right, followed the rules, optimized their lives, and the payoff never came. The truth is simple and uncomfortable. Discipline is necessary, but it is never sufficient when applied without leverage. The productivity industry will never tell you this because productivity content exists to help people function better inside systems, not to help them question whether the system is worth functioning in at all. That's why nearly all productivity advice has nothing to do with money. Morning routines, habit tracking, time blocking, clean diets. Minimalism. These things may improve clarity or health, but none of them create direct contact with money. Money does not respond to cleanliness. It responds to value flow. This is the missing link most people never see. A disciplined lifestyle does not automatically place you near opportunity. All discipline does is make you more efficient at whatever you're already doing. And if what you're already doing has a ceiling, discipline just helps you hit that ceiling faster. History makes this obvious. Take Jakob Fugger in the early 1500s. He was known as Fugger the Rich, a German merchant, banker, and mining entrepreneur from Augsburg, whose fortune and financial influence shaped the politics and economy of Renaissance Europe. His innovations in banking and global trade practices earned him a reputation as one of the wealthiest individuals in history and a pioneer of modern capitalism. He didn't outwork other merchants. Many of them were more disciplined and visibly virtuous. What made Fugger dangerous was position. He financed emperors, controlled silver supply routes, and embedded himself so deeply into European politics that wars stalled if he stepped away. His leverage came from being structurally necessary, not morally impressive. Or look at Armand Hammer, an American industrialist best known for transforming Occidental Petroleum Corporation into a global energy powerhouse. His life was chaotic by modern productivity standards. No perfect routines, no clean structure. What he controlled was the bridge between US capital and Soviet resources at a time when no one else could operate there. He wasn't paid for discipline. He was paid because his absence created geopolitical friction. Even recently, the pattern repeats quietly. Toby Lütke, the co-founder and chief executive officer of Shopify, wasn't the most productive developer when the company first began. Others wrote better code and worked longer hours. Lütke simply positioned himself between merchants and infrastructure right as execution became cheap and coordination became scarce. While others optimized effort, he optimized leverage. None of these people were rewarded for discipline. Their schedules were uneven. Their lives looked inefficient, but they placed themselves where effort multiplied instead of evaporated. Discipline made others reliable. Position made these men unavoidable. This is why productivity culture quietly keeps people trapped. It gives them a sense of control without forcing them to confront the real question, what am I actually building? Most people never answer that honestly. They are busy, disciplined, exhausted, but not building anything that compounds. If this is hitting, pause for a second. Ask yourself one uncomfortable question. Has your discipline actually moved you closer to leverage, or just made you better at surviving where you are? Comment one short word below that captures your realization, something like crowded or reliable. In the next part, we're going to dismantle the illusion completely and expose the real engine behind money. Not effort, not discipline, position. Why money is not a reward but a response. Why absence matters more than presence. And why understanding position changes everything. Money does not flow to effort. It does not flow to intelligence, morality, or even discipline. Money flows to position. That single sentence explains almost every financial inequality people complain about and almost every failure they refuse to understand. Most people think money is a reward. It is not. Money is a response. a response to pressure, dependency, and structural importance. If you want to understand why some people are paid absurd amounts while others grind endlessly for crumbs, stop asking who works hardest and ask the only question that matters. What breaks if this person disappears? Machiavelli saw this clearly. He wrote that power belongs to those who make themselves necessary. Not admirable, not virtuous, necessary. Position is not your job title, your credentials, or your skills in isolation. Position is the relationship between what you do and what the system needs to keep functioning. A position exists only when your absence creates cost, delay, risk, or chaos. No absence, no leverage. No leverage, no money. Most people never think this way. They think in tasks, hours, effort, and compliance. They ask how to become better at what they do. That question keeps them replaceable. The correct question is far more dangerous. What role do I play that cannot be easily removed, outsourced, or ignored? Very few people want to ask that because the answer often shatters their self-image. It forces you to confront the possibility that you are busy but not essential, active but not critical, visible but not necessary. To understand how money really concentrates, you need to understand the three positional layers that exist in every system. The first layer is the replaceable position. This is where the majority of people live. Replaceable means your output is standardized, your tasks are well defined, and your replacement cost is low. If you disappear, someone else can be trained, hired, or automated with minimal disruption. The system barely notices. Replaceable positions are not bad, they are necessary, but they do not accumulate power. In these roles, money is capped because risk is capped. The system does not fear losing you, so it does not pay you to stay. It pays you just enough to remain functional. The second layer is the hard-to-replace position. This is where many people stop climbing because it feels like success. Hard to replace means specialized knowledge, accumulated experience, contextual understanding, and a meaningful onboarding cost. If you disappear, projects slow, quality drops, costs increase. The system is annoyed, not threatened. People in these positions earn more, receive praise, and feel respected. But here is the truth most people miss. Hard to replace is still replaceable given enough time, money, or desperation. Processes change. Tools improve. Someone else learns. Your edge erodes. Your leverage exists, but it is temporary. This is why people in this tier live with quiet anxiety. They sense their value, but they also sense how fragile it is. The third layer is the unavoidable position. This is where money concentrates violently. Unavoidable means decisions cannot move without you. Value cannot flow without you. Risk increases sharply in your absence. If you disappear, the system must reorganize around the loss. Not because you are talented, but because you are structurally embedded. This is where people stop being paid for labor and start being paid for leverage. Income becomes non-linear. Time detaches from reward. Effort stops correlating with outcome. History is full of examples. The wealthiest merchants in Renaissance Florence were not the busiest traders. They controlled credit, routes, and political alliances. During the rise of Standard Oil, Rockefeller was not drilling more oil than everyone else. He controlled refining and distribution choke points. In modern tech, founders who owned platforms, marketplaces, and infrastructure captured orders of magnitude more wealth than equally talented builders who remained employees. Same intelligence, same effort. Different position. Unavoidable positions are rare because they are uncomfortable. They attract scrutiny. They create enemies. They cannot be earned through obedience. They must be taken. This is why most people never reach them. Systems do not want dependency. They tolerate it only when forced. And to force dependency, you must move into risk. Unavoidable positions sit at the intersection of uncertainty and consequence. This brings us to the reality of 2026, why speed now beats skill. In stable eras, depth of skill mattered more than speed. In unstable eras, speed of repositioning destroys depth of skill, and 2026 is not stable. Technology is accelerating. Institutions are lagging. Rules are unclear. AI is not coming. It is already embedded. But AI does not eliminate value. It relocates it, and relocation creates temporary asymmetry. Most people experience AI as a threat because they are attached to tasks. Tasks are easy to automate, positions are not. When execution becomes cheap, distribution becomes everything. When production becomes easy, ownership becomes rare. When skill barriers collapse, attention, leverage, and coordination matter more than ever. This is why people with modest ability are outperforming experts right now. Not because they are better, but because they moved. Speed does not mean working harder. It means repositioning before the crowd understands what is happening. Most people are still optimizing inside collapsing lanes. They are upgrading skills for shrinking roles, competing harder in saturated markets, and waiting for clarity that will never arrive. While they wait, the window opens and then quietly closes. Machiavelli warned that fortune favors the bold, not because they are reckless, but because they act before conditions harden. Territory is always claimed before it is validated. Early adopters look foolish. Mid-adopters compete violently. Late adopters rationalize failure. Different technologies, same human behavior. The people who win in short windows are not smarter. They simply accept uncertainty earlier. Pause here and be honest. Are you optimizing inside a lane, or are you repositioning out of one? Comment a single word below that captures where you stand right now. Replaceable, hard, or unavoidable. In the next part, we confront the real barrier that stops almost everyone even after understanding all of this. Not intelligence, not information, identity. Why people can agree with everything you've heard and still do nothing. Why comfort is the most expensive addiction on earth. And why the final move requires something most people will never give up. At this stage, an uncomfortable truth has to be stated clearly. Most people who hear everything you've heard so far, understand every word, and even agree with it intellectually, will still fail. Not because the ideas are wrong, not because the timing is bad, and not because they lack intelligence. They will fail because knowledge does not move people. Safety does. And the moment safety feels threatened, understanding collapses. This is the part most how to get rich content avoids, because it exposes the real enemy. The enemy is not laziness or ignorance. It is attachment. Attachment to comfort. Attachment to predictability. Attachment to being seen as reasonable. Machiavelli understood this deeply. He warned that men cling to what feels secure even when it guarantees weakness, because abandoning it requires losing face, identity, and social approval. Most people do not stay poor because they don't understand leverage. They stay poor because they are addicted to not feeling unsafe. The first fear is uneven income. People say they want freedom, but what they actually want is freedom with a salary. Upside without volatility. Independence without instability. Risk, but only if it feels insured. That combination does not exist. Uneven income is not a flaw in the system. It is the price of leverage. Stable income is what you receive when the system does not need to negotiate with you. Irregular income appears when value is tied directly to outcomes. To most people, an unpredictable paycheck feels like danger, even when the long-term math is clearly superior. The emotional brain does not care about averages. It cares about next month. So people choose capped lanes because predictability feels like survival. They tell themselves they are choosing peace. What they are really buying is emotional anesthesia. The second fear is being seen as stupid. This destroys more potential than failure ever could. Many people will tolerate years of under-earning, but they will not tolerate a few months of looking foolish. They fear explaining unconventional choices, being misunderstood, being judged as reckless. So they choose paths that look intelligent, respectable, and easy to justify. This is social self-defense, and it is lethal. Breakthrough paths almost always look irrational at first. They violate norms. They skip steps. They ignore credentials, which means the early phase comes with ridicule. Most people would rather be quietly miserable than visibly wrong. They prefer slow decay to loud risk. Machiavelli noted that men fear disgrace more than loss, even when disgrace is temporary and loss is permanent. The third fear is darker, the fear of succeeding in a way that feels low status. People are not only afraid of failing, they are afraid of winning the wrong way. They want wealth that looks noble, clean, and admirable. As a result, they reject opportunities that feel too simple, unglamorous, or beneath their identity. They say things like, "That's not me," or "I want to do something meaningful," when what they really mean is, "I don't want to feel inferior while winning." The market does not care about your self-image. It pays for utility, and utility is often boring, unsexy, and invisible. This is why many people choose to struggle doing things they are proud of, rather than win doing things they secretly look down on. Ego is expensive. Then there is the most dangerous force of all, comfort. Comfort is not rest. Comfort is avoidance without pain. It is routine, predictability, and low emotional friction, and it is chemically addictive. Predictability lowers stress. Familiarity stabilizes identity. Even when comfort is quietly destroying someone's future, they defend it. They rationalize it. They romanticize it. Comfort is not neutral. Comfort is a trade, and the currency is potential. This is why people don't move, even when the path is clear. The cost is not intellectual, it is emotional. Moving requires loss of identity, loss of certainty, loss of social validation, and loss of psychological safety. Most people are not willing to experience those losses voluntarily. They would rather be unhappy than unsafe. This is where the archetypes reveal themselves. The employee believes the problem is pay or recognition, but their real issue is dependency. Their output is filtered. Their absence changes nothing. The small business owner believes ownership equals freedom, but they are embedded, not positioned. If they stop, everything breaks. The creator believes attention equals leverage, but they do not own distribution. They are tolerated, not essential. Different lives. Same cage. All three optimize execution inside a lane instead of questioning the lane itself. They become better prisoners, and the final step out of that cage is the one almost no one takes: cutting the exit. As long as retreat exists, your nervous system never commits. You can understand leverage, agree with positioning, and still keep a back door open. "I'll try, but I can go back." That safety valve is exactly why nothing changes. The game only changes when retreat becomes impossible, when there is no guaranteed paycheck, no respected identity to hide behind, no authority figure to blame. This is the point of no return, not because the world suddenly rewards you, but because you stop negotiating with yourself. Responsibility becomes total, and total responsibility changes how you think, what you tolerate, and what you do next. When excuses disappear, helplessness disappears with them. History is clear on this. Every real wealth break contains a period that looks like loss. Fewer people around you, less certainty, more tension. Machiavelli observed that those who gain power often appear weakened first, because they have abandoned old protections before new ones solidify. This is where most people turn back, and that is the line. On one side are people who keep optimizing effort inside crowded lanes, competing harder each year for shrinking rewards. On the other are people who reposition early, accept short-term instability, and exit the crowd. Both groups work hard. Both are intelligent. Only one compounds. Before this ends, take one final action. If you're still here, comment one word below that represents the decision you know you're avoiding. No explanation. Just the word. And if this way of thinking speaks to you, subscribe and join a growing community of men who are done chasing comfort and ready to understand power, leverage, and wealth as they actually are. There is nothing left to explain. 26 will not reward effort, discipline, or good intentions. It will reward speed of repositioning. You do not beat 99% by being better. You beat them by not being where they are.